Catman Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program a former Major League Baseball pitcher who played during the 1960s for the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels. I welcome to the program Pete Cimino. Pete, great to have you. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Well, thank you, Brian. Great to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Pete, let's begin 1960. A year in which a few high school athletes around the country were sought after, but you were one of those rare ones, highly regarded for, your all-around athletic ability, not only playing baseball, but playing basketball, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I played both sports and enjoyed both of them.
And I read that, playing basketball, you were some basketball player. I mean, you were averaging like 23 points a game at Bristol.
Yes, it was a good year. My senior year, I did a lot of good scoring, and we won the championship, which is what it was all about. So that was fine.
So now the story goes, so it was basketball and baseball that caught the attention of the scouts. I mean, you were drawing headlines. There was articles written about you in the sporting news back then. Is that how the Washington Senators got a hold of you?
Yes, back in those days, they had scouts. Each team had their own scouts. They used to travel around and look at different players. And Harry Gatilius was in Philadelphia, and he came to Bristol, where I was raised, and he saw me pitch and recommended me to the Minnesota Twins, which at that time was the Washington Senators, before they moved to Minneapolis. And the vice president of the Twins came down to see me pitch, and 7 days after I graduated, I signed a contract with the Washington Senators.
I mean, that's remarkable. I mean, you were a teenager. How was your reaction when when you first knew that you were going to head to a professional baseball organization?
Well, I knew that professional baseball was always what I wanted to do, in my life, and fortunately, it worked out. I was really amazed that everything went so smoothly. I mean, I had an offer from the Pittsburgh Pirates at the same time, but I chose the Washington Senators because of the money factor. And, it's the way it was in those days. Things were a lot different than they are today, of course.
Right. And your parents were supportive?
Oh, my parents were always supportive. My father was always at every ball game, whether it was baseball or basketball, and he used to switch shifts at the chemical plant so he can watch me play. And my mother also attended mostly all the games. Yes.
That's great to hear. So 61, 62, those years you're playing with the Senators / Twins in the Appalachian League and the Carolina League. But it was 62, looking at your record, which stood out because that was a dominant year for you. You went something like 12 and 13. Your ERA was under 3.4, and you struck out like 20 batters in one game, 1962, right?
Yes, that's correct. 61, I was with the same team, the Wilson, North Carolina, and I wound up with a sore arm that year. But 62 was a lot better year, although we did not have a good team. I did pretty well. I pitched a no-hitter that year also, as well as striking 20 batters in one game, which set a Carolina League record at the time.
That's right. I mean, you were recording back then like a strikeout per game. I think you totaled like 190 that season in 190 innings or so.
Yeah, it was a good year, and I didn't have a sore arm, which was great. It's because the previous year I did have a sore arm, so that was good, and things were looking good. My records were not all that great years after, but I was on my way, and hopefully I was going to get to the big leagues one day.
Yeah, and the scouting report on you, Pete, back then was that you were a hard thrower, right? You had a blazing fastball back then.
Well, I had a good fastball, and my curveball was suspect. It came and went. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was not good. And when it was not good, you rely on a fastball, and you're going to get hit all the time. So, but when it was working, things, I pitched a pretty good game most of the time.
Yeah, and I also read that you were taught how to throw a curveball from Johnny Sane.
Well, yeah, I had a curveball. Like I said, it wasn't real great, but Johnny Sane in '66 with the Twins, he was working with me in the bullpen on throwing a better curveball. And, it worked for a while, and then I went back to my old habits again, as usual. And it didn't work. So it worked and it didn't work.
But I mean, getting a lesson from Johnny Sane. I mean, he's known as the man with 1,000 curves, right?
Yeah, Johnny was a great pitcher in himself, and he was also a good teacher, and he was a very, very nice man, a very, very good gentleman all the time.
We're talking with the former Major League Baseball pitcher, Pete Cimino, who's with us. Now, Pete, if I'm not mistaken, just tell me if I'm correct or wrong. Your first Major League appearance came, I believe, against the Orioles, September 1965. I'm not sure if that's correct. But your recollection of that very first appearance on a Major League mound, how was it for you?
Well, I was, needless to say, I was quite nervous, facing the Baltimore Orioles. They had Brooks Robinson and Boog Powell, and I was quite nervous, and I had just come off an injury to my right hand, just got off the cast, and they put me in for that one inning, and fortunately, I got the 3 outs, 1, 2, 3, but needless to say, yes, I was very nervous.
Very nervous. I mean, so how did your teammates, take you in? Did they accept you? The Twins had great players, like, of course, Harmon Killebrew. You had Jim Cott, the great Tony Oliva. How did they accept you when you first came into the ball club?
Well, I think I was accepted pretty well. You have to remember that I was at spring training with these same people for 5 years, so I knew all of them quite well, and they knew me. And so there was no problem there, and they were mostly older players, so, I enjoyed the fact that they were older, and they just kind of took me under their wing, and everything went smooth.
Yeah, and then how was it playing under Sam Mele was the manager, right?
Sam Mele was the manager in 1966, and he was, he was a kind of a quieter guy, he wasn't the rah-rah type, and very gentle and a good man, and it was nice playing for him. And, I had a fairly good year. My record didn't show it, but, I threw the ball pretty well for the most part. And I really enjoyed that year.
Man, and then also 1966, Pete, a notable game for you came June 9th against the Kansas City Athletics. You pitched 2 scoreless innings, and I believe that was your first big league victory.
That was my first victory, and it was unforgettable because the Twins tied an American League record that game by hitting 5 home runs in 1 inning. And I was on the bench watching it, and it was really unbelievable. And they just missed the 6th home run by a couple of feet. So it was a great game, and I was really happy to get a win finally.
Amazing. And then it was always it was yourself, Pete Cimino, and Al Worthington. You guys were the 1 and 2 aces of the ball club. How did you get along with Al Worthington?
Well, I got along great with Al. He was, he was a very gentle man and religious, I might add. And what happened was he wound up with a little bad arm sometime in the middle of the year, and they gave me a chance to be a closer, which I was the year before playing in Denver. And, I closed for a while and did so-so, and I guess they were not excited about my performance, so they relieved me of that duty and put in another pitcher. So,
now, do you remember your final appearance as a Twins player? And how come did they decide to trade you?
Well, that's a good question. I can't remember my final appearance. I really can't. But why they traded me, I do not know. That was beyond my control. I was extremely disappointed, to say the least, after being in the organization for 6 years. I was disappointed, but, you have to move on sometimes.
Yeah, because like I said, you and Worthington, you were the ace in the bullpen. So I'm really surprised they actually traded you.
Well, from what I understand, I found out later, the Twins were going to send Camilo Pascual to the California Angels, but then I heard that the Angels wanted me. So I guess they decided that they had a chance to get Dean Chance, who was a great pitcher in California. So they figured, they couldn't turn that down, so they had to let it go,
Yeah, it was right. That's correct. So when you got to the Angels, it was yourself along, I believe, with Don Mincher and Jimmy Hall in exchange for Dean Chance. That's correct. So that must have been a big difference, from Minnesota going to California.
It was a great difference for me, after spending 6 years with the Twins organization and going out to California. It was a big change because all the ball players on that team, the California Angels, were younger, very young, and it was an awakening. And needless to say, it was not one of my better years.
And I was looking at an old Sporting News magazine, and I don't know if this is correct. Bob Lemon was really impressed by your ability. Bob Lemon, the great Bob Lemon.
Bob Lemon, yes, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's a great pitcher in himself, and he was the pitching coach, and he worked on my curveball also, and like I said, when he worked on me, it worked good, and then time went by, it disappeared again as usual. So that's the way the game is sometimes.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And also, during that the late '60s, the Twins, they also recruited the pitcher Early Wynn. Early Wynn went to the Twins after you got traded, I believe.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't remember that trade, actually, to be honest. Early Wynn was great in himself. Another 300 victory career. So he was great, but I don't remember that trade.
Yeah. So now let's go fast forward to '68. You made, from what I understand, only you made 4 appearances with the Angels, allowing 2 earned runs. Now, how was your arm strength back in the late '60s?
Well, in '68, we started out in spring training, and it had rained one time, and they wanted the pitchers to get their work in, and I was on the mound, and I slid off the mound throwing the ball at the same time, and pulled something in my shoulder, and it bothered me quite a bit. And the season started; it was still bothering me, but I pitched, and didn't do too well, so they finally sent me down.
Yeah, and now did you also pitched for you pitched for Seattle, correct?
Correct. Yes, I did pitch with Seattle, and did fairly well in Seattle. And then they decided that I could use the warmer weather, basically because of my arm. So they sent me down to El Paso, Texas, where it was nice and warm, and try to work it out down there. And so that was the end of my career. After that season was over, I was finished. The arm never recovered.
Right, but you're right. You did well in Seattle. You had like a 3-0 record. Your ERA was something like 2.57 in 21 innings. So that's not too shabby.
No, I pitched fairly well in Seattle, but like I said, they decided that with a bad arm that I was pitching with, the hot weather would be a lot better for me, and but my arm never did recover even with the warm weather.
So, looking back at your career, Pete, you must have so many fond memories. What would you say was the highest memory on your list for you?
Well, the highest memory, no doubt, was getting to the big leagues. That was my childhood dream. And the first day I got the call to go up, I put my uniform on, ran into center field, and yelled, "I'm here!" and that was exciting. It was a dream come true for me because I loved baseball and always wanted to be a professional baseball player, and I enjoyed every minute of it, to tell you the truth.
So, I mean, if it wasn't even for baseball, I mean, you could have made it as an NBA player.
Well, not exactly. I was only 6'2", and at the time it was a decent height, but I really wasn't cut out to be a professional basketball player. Baseball was my love, and that's where I wanted to be, and it turned out just right.
Now, so around 69, 70, you retire from the game. What did you end up doing?
Well, I did go back to spring training in 69 to see if my arm had recovered, and it did not. And then I went home and took the year off, went back in 1970 and tried it again to see if my arm had recovered, and it did not. So then I knew, it was time to give it up. And I gave it up and wound up in the beer industry.
Wow. Now, do you still follow baseball? When you retired, did you still follow the game?
Yes, I do. I follow it religiously. Down here in the South, we get the Atlanta Braves about every night, and I turned out to be an Atlanta Braves fan because they're on TV all the time. And they're an exciting team, so they're fun to watch.
And, Pete, a big difference baseball today as when you played, huh? You guys, like the old timers, you were the players for me. You guys really hustled. You really, earned respect. These players of today, like a relief pitcher, they go in one inning and then they're taken out and they're considered the greatest relief pitcher, of all time. You guys were pitching 2-3 innings.
Yeah, when I was with the California Angels, I pitched over 7 innings in relief one time. So, that never happens today, but it could happen back then. And, the game has changed so much over the years. It's hard. You can't compare then back in the 60s as today. These players are so much bigger, stronger, and better than the players back in the day that, it's really fun to watch them play.
Now, some of those, batters that you faced, did you ever face like a Mickey Mantle?
I did face Mickey Mantle. I faced him in New York City twice in 2 different games. The first time I faced him, he hit the first pitch line drive right to the right fielder. And the second time I faced him, I walked him on 4 pitches, which I got a little smarter the second time.
Now, who was like the most difficult batter you had to pitch to?
Well, the most difficult batter I pitched to was Kurt Blefary, who played for the Baltimore Orioles. He was one of them fellas that I couldn't not get out. He hit me quite well, and he was a left-handed hitter, so he had a little advantage on me anyway. So he was the toughest man I faced in the big leagues, no doubt. And I faced Carl Yastrzemski. He was also, he did me in a few times.
I have a couple of minutes left with Pete Cimino, who's with us. Pete, I'm a baseball card collector. I'm reading the back of your baseball cards, and it's been said that back in the '60s that you did have a rubber arm. So, like, what pitching method what did you do for training? What did you do to build up your arm strength?
Well, I didn't do anything special, back then. Building your arm strength, I think, is a matter of pitching. The more you pitch, the stronger your arm's going to get, So, I pitch frequently, and especially out of the bullpen. Like when I was in Denver, I pitched 4 or 5 days in a row in Denver. And so, it's a matter of pitching to keep your arm in good condition. I think that's my opinion anyway.
And you accomplished one of the most difficult things to accomplish. You made it to the major leagues. A scout once told me that the chances of making it to the major leagues are like getting hit by lightning. That's how rare it is. So, you really lived the dream come true.
I did. I lived my dream, and I'm glad I did. I wish it could have lasted longer, but it wasn't meant to be. So, you have to take the good with the bad. But I was glad I was there, and and I played and I pitched against some of the great ball players of all time, and there's something to be said about that too. So I'm well satisfied how my career went.
And the sports card and memorabilia is such a big business. I'm sure you still get a lot of fan mail from your fans asking for autographs. Is that true?
Yes, that's very true. I get at least one a week, and sometimes 2 and 3 a week. And I autograph them all and send them back, and never charge money for any of them. I won't do that. So it works out great.
And your rookie card, for those listening, is 1966. I don't know if you ever had a copy of your rookie card, your 1966 rookie card, which pictures 2 ball players for the Twins. Did you ever get a copy? Like, what was your reaction when you first found out or saw yourself on a baseball card?
Well, I was, back in them days, they never told you that you were going to be on a baseball card. There were so many photographers around, they just asked you for a picture, and they take a picture, and however you were, that's the way you were. And I got on the card with Cesar Tovar, who was a friend of mine, and we played together a couple of years together. And it was quite exciting. I really liked that card. That's really a good card.
Yeah, and that's the card that I'm looking at. It has you and Cesar Tovar, and it's a difficult card to get. It's one of those. It's number 563. It was released late that year, so it's pretty scarce. It's called a high number card, and that card states that Pete is in the bullpen spot, and you have a rubber arm, a right-handed pitcher appearing in 49 ball games at Denver in 65. So that card says that you have a rubber arm back then. So, yeah, I mean, you were, like I said, you were known for throwing a blazing fastball as a relief pitcher, and it's really great to know that I have you on speaking with you.
Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on. It was great talking to you, and I enjoyed it. And, maybe we'll do it again another time.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, thanks so much. We'll keep in touch.
Okay, Brian. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. We just heard from former Major League pitcher who played for the Twins and Angels, Pete Cimino. And yeah, I mean, his 1966 Topps is considered his rookie card. As Pete mentioned, he's on the card pictured with Cesar Tovar. And the card is number 563 in the 1966 Topps series. A pretty scarce card because it's considered a high number card. The high number cards in that series were released in limited quantity for the season. So it's pretty neat to speak with Pete, who is a high number on the 1966 Topps baseball card, and he's pictured with Cesar Tovar. So thanks so much, Pete, for coming on the program, and we'll do it again next week. Until next week, happy collecting to all.